Ontarians, they should. That measure those measures should include real rent control.
Now we understand that there may be some rent-to-own provisions in this legislation. I mean, is that a good step? I mean, a lot of the things that they're talking about are stuff that you guys had called for before that they wouldn't do, and now they're kind of going in a I guess a small p progressive direction. Are you encouraged by at least the signals that you're seeing?
We would want to see the legislation before we can comment. The devil is in the details. Rent-to-own programs can be a very useful solution to help people get into the housing market and buy their first home, but we would need to see the details.
What are you looking for in the upcoming fall economic statement?
Question.
Well, we've outlined our priorities. Reinvestment in healthcare, dealing with the healthcare crisis. You need to deal with the cost of living crisis. We think that investment in our schools, making sure that there are fair agreements with education workers, all those things should be priorities in that fall economic statement.
And given that we're seeing continued inflation, it's possible we could see more money coming into the government coffers like we just saw. What's the government be doing with that bonus money?
Well, clearly, as we've said this past week, we have a healthcare crisis. They could be investing the windfall revenues in making sure that we have the healthcare workers in place, the nurses in place, the home care in place to look after Ontarians. And if they're not doing that, they're being negligent. They have the financial resources to do it. They should be doing it.
Doly, you mentioned the $200. I believe you were talking about the announcement yesterday. Mm-hmm. He talked about inflation there. I mean, could this be a positive that parents are going to get a little help?
Well, when we're talking about families struggling to make ends meet, 100% we need to support families. We need to make sure that, every working class family right now that needs a little bit of help, whether it's through, rent control, whether it's being able to afford their groceries, we need those support. But using education as that sort of, I think, a scapegoat and trying to, give a wink and a nudge and say, well, families are struggling and you can use that. And I think that's what the minister was probably implying yesterday. That's not the right solution. If we're talking about education, we need to invest in our classrooms. If we're talking about education workers, we're really bargaining here for the average income earner who's about, $39,000. These education workers, over 55,000 of them, are custodians, librarians, ECEs. They're the ones who are not making ends meet right now. And we need to be able to bargain in good faith and say, well, you know what, we respect the work that you do. We are able to listen to you. And who's going to suffer at the end if we don't bargain in good faith? Parents and the children. And so this is a much bigger conversation of one that's part of what we need to do to invest in our schools and our education system, and another piece, which is what we need to do, as Peter talked about, which is the rising cost of living right now.
What's your response that announcement came as they're in the middle of these difficult contract negotiations?
I think your question answers it itself, really. We've seen this government do that time and time again. And it's a way to pit parents against educators. It's a way to, show the government's intention. And I just worry that at the end of the day, it'll be our parents and students and the educators who will suffer. And we shouldn't be doing that.
You mentioned price gouging. How would that work? Like, how would you want to?
Sure. The provincial government does have the legal authority to deal with price gouging. I think they should be looking at areas where we're seeing record profits and at the same time record prices, and looking for action both to give relief to consumers, but also to take those funds from those companies, those sectors that are doing very well through inflation.
Which sectors, like groceries?
Well, the grocery sector is doing very well, and people are having a tough time buying groceries. You're well aware of the price fixing actions or the price fixing prosecutions that have been undertaken in the past. This is a sector where pricing has not been favorable for consumers. And I think this provincial government should be looking into that and taking action where they can to protect consumers.
Do you think there should be some type of investigation into price gouging?
Yes, there should be, frankly. Again, the province has the ability to legally take action against gougers. I've never seen them take action, even though the Premier has talked about that. And
the toll-free number.
Oh, yes, and the toll-free number. Yes, thank you. Who could forget the toll-free number? I think they should be looking at areas where people are being hit hard and taking action against those who are making unconscionable profits. I think my colleagues talked about incredible soaring rents. When you look at the investments made by private equity firms in housing, they're not doing that because they're charities. They're doing that because they can make a fortune. And this government should be going after those who are taking advantage of the housing crisis to squeeze people.
Peter, I know you've already addressed it and it's kind of old, but I'm just wondering if I could get you in English on the Hydro-Quebec thing from like a week and a half ago.
Okay. It makes no sense to me that we would end an agreement to bring makes no sense to me that we would end an agreement that provides emission-free power to Ontario. We've already been told that there's a crunch coming. Why you would not lock in and keep locked in firm commitments for power when this is a government that's contemplating building new gas-fired power plants, which will be very expensive, which will defeat our climate needs. Why you would take that course instead of retaining the relationship with Hydro-Quebec, in fact, expanding it.
And, the OEB has authorized price hikes over the course of the year. Gas bills can be very expensive this winter. We already subsidize hydro a lot. Wondering, do you think we should further subsidize gas bills or anything to help people over the winter, or stay out of that?
Yeah, we've said there are two things the government needs to do with people's heating bills. It needs to ramp up dramatically its investment in energy conservation so that people can cut their consumption, cut their greenhouse emissions, and cut their bills. And frankly, it should be coming forward with a plan to provide subsidies to those who are struggling the most with heating bills that are going to make it very difficult for them to actually put food on the table at the same time.
What about the opioid crisis? We've seen since 2017, its deaths are up more than 100%, largely under this government. Really skyrocketed during the pandemic. What do you want to see done there?
I would say that we have argued in the past that clinics for people to self-administer under supervision so that they are not unnecessarily putting themselves at risk makes a lot of sense. As you're aware, this is a government that's cut back on the ability to set up these clinics. They're wrong. This has led to deaths, and frankly, the other part of this is you need to invest in mental health supports. People don't engage in using those drugs on a whim. Usually they're dealing with some profound problem. Investing in more mental health supports would help reduce the rate of addiction and thus the rate of death. Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, as a reminder, if you have a question, please press star 1. Your first question on the phone comes from Jeff Gray with Globe and Mail. Please go ahead.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. I just wanted to ask, going back to the housing bill, there's a whole bunch of things floating around and have been reported. One of them is the idea that the bill will restrict or completely eliminate the ability of third parties, so residents groups, environmentalists, even other developers, from challenging anything at the what we now call the Ontario Land Tribunal. Is that a concern for you?
We want to see the details of the legislation before we can comment fully. We have long called for reform to the Lands Tribunal to ensure that affordable housing goals are met, but that municipalities and residents also have a fair say. That is our position on that.
And to follow up on that, just the other piece that people have seized on, one of the recommendations from that panel that the government has committed to but not actually enacted, and it's not clear to me they're going to actually do it on Tuesday either, is this, you mentioned exclusionary zoning. The way that's been laid out is to allow, as of right, anywhere, I believe 6 units, 4 stories. Is that something? Is that your understanding of that? Is that what you'd like to see? That particular policy?
Our party, the Ontario NDP, has put forward a comprehensive housing plan that includes moving forward on ending exclusionary zoning, and that must be twinned with a plan to build more affordable housing, as well as measures to clamp down on speculation and bring in real rent control. We need a comprehensive approach to make housing affordable for current Ontarians as well as new Ontarians that are planning on calling our province home.
Your next question comes from Colin DeMello with Global News. Please go ahead.
Hey, good morning. Peter, there seems to be a lot of talk about a recession on the horizon. I'm wondering what you think the fall economic statement needs to focus on, or if there needs to be any kind of cushion or support payments to people if there is indeed a recession.
It's a good question, Colin. I think that we've outlined what our priorities are for this immediate session. We have in the past said that if you're going to actually increase employment in Ontario, engaging in a very large-scale climate plan, large-scale energy conservation, development of renewables, would actually help Ontario weather a recession, a downturn in employment. And I think if this government committed to taking action on climate, it could create a lot of jobs and make it much easier for people in Ontario to get through any recession. Having said that, I'll also note that Ontario Works and ODSP payments need to be doubled because if more people do find themselves needing that kind of support, they will find themselves in desperate situations if the government has not actually increased those support payments.
Thank you. And just on the municipal election coming up, we all know that the former leader of the NDP is running for the mayor of Hamilton. Is the Ontario NDP endorsing Andrea Horwath at all as the next mayor of Hamilton?
We actually haven't had any discussion about any formal endorsements, but frankly, I think just about every new Democrat in Ontario is endorsing Andrea to be the new mayor of Hamilton.
Is that so she won't come back here?
Oh, come on, Rob.
Just throwing that out.
You guys are so mischievous some days. No, we want her to be successful. She did a lot of good work here. She'll do good work as the mayor of Hamilton. We hope that she's successful.
She'll get strong mayor powers. Possibly.
Possibly. Other questions? No more mischief.
I think that may be it on the phone line. So, thanks, folks.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Appreciate it.